I grew up in Miami, born and raised, one of those first generations of born and raised Miamians, and grew up primarily in Kendall area, south of Kendall, and left when I was 32. And so it's my mom and dad, and I have two younger brothers growing up, and very small family. My father is one of 10 children, with only one being a full sister. The rest were half brothers and sisters, who I've never met. And then my mom only had a sister. So we had a very, very small nucleus of immediate family. And now I have two daughters and two stepchildren. So it really is a very small family. Yes, my dad was brought up as Unorthodox Jew. However, his mom passed away before his 13th birthday and went to live with a Christian Science family. And so at that point, he had never eaten pork or had unkosher food or anything. But that all changed when he went to live with his family. And my mom was brought up very Reform. Her side of the family is, I think, third generation. She was third generation American. They grew up in New Orleans, and so they were very, very Reform. Christmas. I think, and that's, there's many my age. Barry Block would tell you the same thing. Christmas. He had a Christmas tree. We had a Christmas tree growing up. I have pictures of us all dressed in red and white pajamas with the feet in them and a Christmas tree. But yet also Hanukkah and Passover. I mean, I think it was more from the, just being part of American society, and that's what we did until we were older. But my mom used to do a lot for Hanukkah, right? It was like one big holiday in December. And so that's pretty much what I remember is Hanukkah. Well, she'd decorate the house, and then it would change to a Christmas tree, and it was just a lot of fun. We did. My mom and dad are charter members of Temple Beth in Miami. I can, and still to this day, are active as far as being dues paying and caring about Temple and being, knowing what's going on, just physically not able. But I remember going to Sunday school at the University of Miami is where the congregation started, and they held Sunday school classes in what were the barracks for during World War II on the University of Miami property. So I can remember going there and still go to Temple with my parents as often as I can. So yeah, they're very active in sisterhood and brotherhood and Sunday school, and I can remember my dad being a fortune teller for the Purim Carnival, and my mom doing all kinds of stuff. So it's really nice. I think, well, part of that it has to do with moving away from Miami. I think, well, a couple of things. I think, especially moving to San Antonio, where when I first moved here in 1989, I think you really have to, at that time you had to me, work to be Jewish. Being in Miami, you're Jewish because you are. It's, everybody knows what lox and bagels are. The schools are closed for high holidays. They don't give tests on the holidays. Even to this day, the kids still get out for Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. That does not happen in San Antonio, and it's really an education that I found I had to do in the school systems for my daughter. I think people assimilated here so much that they held their Jewishness very close to the vest, and I was not used to that. I think that's really changed since I've been here. So I think that, one, I've had to work at being Jewish. I think being much more active, much more of an involved outwardly in the community, and not being afraid to say I'm Jewish. I mean, I've never been afraid, but not having that as a barrier for me, where it's like, say in Miami, you're Jewish because you are. You know, I had to work at it to show that, to keep my identity, to keep my Jewishness alive, because it would have been very easy. I had many, many friends that they just went to the services during the high holidays, like 9/11, for example. Some people, either, you know, in all religions, ran to their nearest religious institution, or they stayed away in fear. And I had a lot of my Jewish friends stay away in fear. So I think that it really meant I had to stay. Don't want to say stand my ground, but I had to be firm in who I was and not be afraid of that, and really be excited about it, you know, and explore it in ways that I had not, whether it's being, you know, active in National Council of Jewish Women or Sisterhood, or be at the board, or and it also created a sense of community. Because in Miami, all my friends were Jewish. Everybody was Jewish, you know. Here, that's just not the case, you know. So I think that you find you have to, you know, I had to work at it. I have a T-shirt from a few years ago that I'm one of 9,006 or 9,001 or something. It's a very small part of the population, you know, so it's like 1%. I mean, it's a very, very small part, and it's very diverse in that how many congregations we have, and not necessarily, you know, as you and I have talked about when doing this series, is okay, is there someone who's Orthodox and someone who's Reform and someone from, you know, conservative or Chabad. In many ways, that's also very segregated in our community for being so small, because there's tends to just stay within your own congregation and not a lot of interfaith, as you know. So that part is can be isolating as well as a community. Well, both my daughters were raised in a Jewish home. You know, so my oldest daughter stayed with with my first husband. She stayed and lived with him. I don't think she was raised as I would have raised her in a Jewish home, but she was bat mitzvahed, and then at some point he just let her off the hook, so to speak. Where Jessica grew up here, and I was very active in National Council of Jewish Women here and at Temple, as well as working for building the campus of the San Antonio Jewish community. So she was kind of immersed in that Judaism, either through work or just home life. So it was different for the two of them. Still, Melissa, my oldest daughter, is still faith-based, but just both lived in different environments as far as that's concerned. I don't know if stressors is the right word, but I think that you know, marriage is hard enough. That you know, we've had to come to realize that that's one thing that we do not have in common, and so, you know, it's finding those commonalities and other things and being respectful of the differences at the same time. But you know, being of the same faith does not mean that you're going to stay married either. So I've just had to, you know, figure out how to make that work. And I wouldn't call it stress. I just think that you just have to work. You have to work at it, you know. I think that that has, you know, over time changes. You know, I think, you know, for me, now is I work on Yom Kippur in a very, I volunteer on Yom Kippur through the at Temple for the last, I don't know, 5 years. I'm chair all the volunteers for the high holidays, which seems to most people pretty easy because they think of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but the reality is it's about 6 or 7 holidays where I take responsibility of getting all the volunteers, and it takes about 100 volunteers to make it happen. So part of it to me at Yom Kippur is work, in a way, making sure that the congregants are taken care of, that they're respected, that we call it audacious hospitality at Temple, and that's happening even on Yom Kippur, which is a Day of Atonement. And so I find that very satisfying to do that and be a part of that, because it's not easy for people to for many people to come in that day, or they may only be coming in for the high holidays, and to make sure that they feel part of community. So I look at it as a day for me of really of community, now that we live here, as well as, although it's not usually with family, but also when we break fast, it's usually a time when it's of celebrating with our friends that we've celebrated the new year, we've atoned for our sins of the next, and that together as a community we will look forward to the new year together. So it's kind of a bittersweet time, but yet it's an exciting time. I'm good about throwing guilt, but I've learned that from my mother, who learned that from her mother, and so on. I think forgiveness is hard. It's hard work. It's hard work, and I don't think that I'm very good at it, at least within my immediate family. I think that it's very difficult sometimes to forgive. It really is. I think that, or maybe or the forget part too, but I find it hard. It should be something much easier to do and be able to move on, but I find it difficult. For my confirmation when I was 16, we had to have a quote or something, and mine was, as Jesus, we don't believe in or heaven or hell, and that we make it or heaven or hell on earth. And I really believe that. However, I do believe that, I do believe the soul lives on. I do believe when I look at my grandson Seth, he looks just like my ex-husband's mother. I mean, it's really scary. And he mimics her in ways. He never knew her as I think she was already passed away. But I feel like some is really coming out through him. And so I do believe a lot of that mannerisms or something does continue, that soul continues in us, and that, I don't know, I just feel their presence around me. It's about loving one another and spoiling one another. But it's really about sharing of oneself, and sharing what you can share, and that's easy, easy of giving of yourself. I think that's really sometimes the hard part, is to give of yourself. And it's not just about money. It's about sharing stories, or cooking a favorite meal. The kids like, when they come to visit, they kind of like I talk about my mom's making stuffed cabbage. Those memories are what truly live on, but it's not even the taste of the food, but what happened when we were making the food and boiling the water and stuffing the stuffed cabbage. So I think that's really about passing on, is sharing sharing time with one another, and because that's priceless. You can't replace that. You know, you can buy all the things you want for somebody, but it is just sitting down and holding somebody's hand that you cannot, you can't reinvent that or replace it. And so I think that's what I would want, is that that family time is so important, and to really share that.